So welcome everybody to this Facebook Live. Super excited about our guest today, Miss Rachel Leah Gerson. Not Lee, it's Leah Gerson. And she is a metaphysical practitioner. So I'm not even totally sure what that is, but she will explain to us what that is. And she's a teacher in the FeelTank. And today we're talking in light of National Mental Health Awareness Month. Is her specific gifts and experience and knowledge in all things psychic. So I'm really excited today to hear and learn more about what that is and how it relates to mental illness or mental health. So we're going to delve into what signs might you be experiencing that are not really mental illness, but something else around the lines of a spiritual awakening and all that fun, woo-woo, spiritual, yet scientific stuff. So with that, Rachel, would love to just say hi, tell us about yourself and all things psychic.
Hi. What's up, Kara? It's so good to be on here with you, and I always enjoy our collaboration process, so I'm really excited to be here.
Likewise.
So metaphysical practitioner. So what does metaphysical mean? It literally means meta, which means beyond, physical, which would be the physical, tangible world, body, things.
Yeah.
So yeah, essentially it's beyond physics, or beyond the physical. And so that's what I work with. I work with the energy body, but also the intersection and the philosophy behind where is that mind-body connection? Where is the energy physical integration? Where does everything intersect and intertwine? And so what I do in my practice, it's called Doorway to Self. And what I do in my practice is I combine counseling techniques with psychic tools to help people to better understand what their whole selves are and what they're here to do in this world with their whole selves. So,
whoa,
yeah.
Cool. So I'm curious, like, how you got into this. What's your background? I know you're in school. I know you've got your own private practice. You're a teacher in the FeelTank. You're always up to a lot of cool stuff. How did you get into this metaphysical world?
Yeah. So that's a question I get asked a lot, and my answer is I was conceived. It's pretty much as simple as that. I've always had an interest in energy. Ever since I was a really little girl. I can remember even at age 4 telling my mom, like, oh, like these stones, like picking up stones off the beach on Lake Michigan, which is where I live, and just saying, oh, these have like energetic, like, well, not that language, but something is going on, like these have magic in them.
Yeah.
So yeah, I am, I've always been doing stuff along those lines. When I'm in my practice, I combine tools like astrology and numerology, which I started studying at 11, card readings, which I started learning how to do at 13, energy healing, which I've kind of always done, but the method I learned called twisting the bone, I learned in college. What else? Just all sorts of things, tailored guided meditations. I do psychic diagnostics of psychic ability, prescription stones and crystals. I mean, all sorts of, you name it. So
that's rad. Okay. So that was a lot of things. And also you're in school too, right? What are you studying again?
So I am not, so when I say I'm combining counseling techniques with psychic tools, it's really important to understand that I am not a licensed mental health professional.
Yeah.
I'm in school for that right now. I'm at Western Michigan University studying clinical mental health counseling, and I'll end with a limited license in mental health and mental counseling. So
okay, so this is perfect for you to be here and speaking on these conversations. And also, want to mention to you guys, I'm clicking over from Zoom to here, but if you have questions for Rachel while she's on, we're going to be on for the next 20 minutes or so. I would imagine some people on here have had mystical experiences, and it can be kind of confusing, and there isn't often a place to share that. I've even found it, I guess I'll tell a little personal story too. Like, I've never felt like I have like psychic abilities, although I know you say that everyone does.
Yeah.
But I will say, as I've, evolved on this spiritual path over the last couple years, I do have interesting things happen, and I don't really often know where to share them. And even though I'm the founder of the FeelTank and I have, 30 amazing women like yourself to share it with, sometimes I still feel like, oh, this is a little funny. And I find myself Googling a lot and going down the rabbit hole of spiritual online message boards. And I don't know about the results of that because it's very one-sided. It's not really a two-way conversation, but it is nice to see experiences that other people have had that are similar. And so, especially when I started to get into a little bit of a psychic, I guess I was having, intuition in itself, I guess, is psychic, right?
Yeah, actually the technical term for intuition is claircognizance, meaning clear feeling or clear knowing.
Right. Clear knowing, clear feeling. And yes, I want to get into the clairs in a little bit too. And so I had a vision. I was in a sound bath and I had a vision, and it was a certain person's face. And anyway, I was, in the same time, I was also having, I guess what you could say would be a Kundalini awakening, where my body was, and still is, but for the last 6 months, I've been experiencing a lot of chakra openings where I'll kind of like lay in bed, especially if I'm in some sort of meditative state, and I find my chakras are untangling themselves. And at first I was really scared. I was like, what's happening? But I just trusted, and I've allowed that. I think it's just stuck energy that, is moving through. And now that my chakras are more open, not always, but I'm experiencing more of these visions, the clear feelings for sure. So I guess I want to talk about, I would love your thoughts on when someone is having these experiences, especially for the first time. What do you recommend that they do? Do you think the online forums are helpful, or do you say, just trust in yourself, or see someone like yourself, or a combination of all those things?
I think definitely a combination. I think so let me give you an example. So when I like I said, I kind of went through my whole life with these abilities knowingly. I think most people don't knowingly, or as children they knowingly are, and then the adults in their lives are like, oh, that's bad, or oh, that's not real, or oh, I'm so glad you're playing pretend using your imagination. And so then most people kind of drop them off and leave them at 5 years old and grow up, right? So when I kind of kept these things to myself for the most part, because I was thinking, oh yeah, it's, most people are just going to look at it as imagination, even though to me it's extremely real. And when I was 15, I ended up opening to a girl I went to camp with about it, and she was like, oh my gosh, that sounds so much like, and actually she introduced me to Wicca, which I no longer practice, but did as a teenager, because what I do is, it's not religious by any means. It's for anyone and everyone, because if you're human, you're psychic. Not if you're Christian, you're psychic, or if you're Jewish, you're psychic. Like, if you are human, you're psychic.
Yeah.
And so when I was 17, I got this in my head of like, oh, all these other people are doing this stuff. And so I started researching, and I found this one book, and it showed all of the colors matched up to all of these things, right? Like, if you're trying to attract money into your life, use a green candle. Or if you're trying to attract love into your life, use roses, or, whatever it is. And it was all of these very specific associations. And I remember reading each one and going, oh, I never thought of it that way. Like, I always thought of, if I wanted to attract money, I would use a blue candle, because blue kind of feels more like that to me. And to attract love, I'm thinking more tulips, because those kind of speak, and I remember reading every association and going, oh, well, this person is the expert. They wrote a book, and so they know better than I do. And I think that's the pitfall we can easily fall into when we're things online, is like, oh, okay, well, it's written here, or it's written in this book, or it's said on this YouTube video, and this person is an expert. And the thing is maybe they are an expert on energy in general, but they're not an expert on you and how you relate to energy.
Yeah.
And so that's why I think that integration of methods is really important, because using Google as a reference and saying, oh, okay, this person views this thing this way, that's something to take into consideration. And this other person views it this way, and that's something to take into consideration. And then checking in with yourself and saying, how do I feel about that? Where do I stand?
Yeah.
And then having somebody else to talk to, whether it's a counselor or a metaphysical practitioner or a life coach or whomever it is, to say, these are my feelings. This is how it matches up with what I'm reading online or talking about with other people or whatever, and being able to kind of see where you fit energetically into your surroundings.
That's awesome. That's cool. And it does seem like it is an act of trust, and these are messages that we're supposed to be receiving in some way, right? So I know a lot of us are really into having super clear channels so that we can receive the most effective downloads. So how would you describe a download? Because it's talked about a lot in the spiritual community. What do you think that is?
That's a great question. I think a download is a shift in perception to the point where we are heightened. So it's kind of like a light bulb moment on crack. Like, it's like,
right.
You know, it's like we all have those light bulb moments where it's like this integration, but I think a download is like a full understanding, a full knowing of either the self or our surroundings or our earth or beyond our earth or whatever it is that we're trying to fully integrate into our existence and understanding. And so I think it's that. But also on another level, I think it's also, you know, when you get a download, it's like this huge thing and you just want to go out and share it with people. And I think that's part of what the download mechanism is like being able to go out and share and expand other people's knowledge and have conversations and really dig into the dirt of this awesomeness.
Yeah. And isn't it so cool? Like the idea of downloads and I guess knowledge, whether it's an intuition or some sort of knowledge space, there's studies that show that, like, there was a really hard New York Times crossword puzzle and no one could answer it. And then they found that one woman completed it, and but I don't know how long the time period was before that no one could, but then like back to back people completed it at the same time. So that idea that there's this like collective consciousness that we're all receiving downloads from, it seems like once some of us turn it on and actually, like you said, put it out in the world, even if they're not in the same physical space as us, other people are then receiving it as well.
Yes.
I love that. Fascinating.
I love that story. That's great.
Yeah.
But yeah, I see it all the time, and I see it, you know, week to week in clients of like, I'll have somebody walk into the room and they'll be working on one aspect of themselves. And then my second client will come in with a completely different issue, and the same themes will come up, or like the same stories or the same nuances. Like, it's just bizarre.
Right.
But I think it is that integration, because we are all connected in some way, shape, or form. And that's where psychic ability comes in.
Yeah. Cool. So on the whole topic of the mind-body connection and mental illness, mental awareness, I don't know where it's talked about, but it's definitely talked about, like, say, in the homeless community that we experience a lot in Venice, where I live, or just as people are starting to become more aware of issues that people have, and whether they should be dealt with medication, therapy, energetic work. Everyone's got their own pieces that they need to fit into. But what do you see sometimes as like misdiagnosis, for example, like where people may come into your world and you're like, no, you're just, you know, receiving a lot of energy. You don't necessarily need to go on medication. Can you talk about your experiences with that?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, this is like my favorite question. So firstly, I do want to kind of throw out there, just for, you know, sanity's sake, that, you know, like I said, I'm not a licensed professional mental health helper yet. And legally, I'm not able to undiagnose anybody's mental proposed diagnosis of.
Okay.
So that's not something I do. What I do is I do diagnose psychic ability, and we can talk about the intersection of, okay, well, where might your symptoms from your diagnosed schizophrenia or your diagnosed anxiety or your et cetera, where might those fit in with your idea of, oh, maybe you're not hallucinating, maybe you're clairvoyant, which is psychic.
Right.
Maybe you're not having auditory hallucinations. Maybe you're actually clairaudient, which is, you know, things like that. You know, from sharing my personal story, I was misdiagnosed with bipolar 1 disorder when I was 20. And they tried to diagnose me when I was 13. I went in for an interview because there are different types of mental health testing that you can have. And so I went in for the interview testing when I was 13, and I was so interested even at that age in mental illness and how it worked and the symptoms that I knew how to lie in the interview.
Yeah.
They were testing me for bipolar. And I was like, no, that's not real. No, that's not right. Like, I don't want to be medicated. And so I lied on the whole thing. And the results were inconclusive. And so they put it off, and they were like, okay, well, we can't do anything with her because it's inconclusive. And so I went on for years and years and years. And when I was just beginning my undergrad, I ended up hurting a lot of people. And I was like, okay, well, maybe, you know, maybe I do have some sort of mental illness. I was noticing a lot of like straight ups and straight downs, and then maybe a lull in between, which is pretty classic bipolar 1 definition.
Right.
Going in, I got tested. I did like the actual tests at that point, the Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Inventory, the MMPI, the MDMI, all this stuff that is probably gibberish to somebody who doesn't know what it is. But the point is it's like, they're like 500 question tests that have like all these different multiple mechanisms built in that kind of make sure that you are telling the truth, that you're not lying, like all of these things to make sure that you are being truthful in your answers, or not overcompensating or whatever. And so my diagnosis was anxiety, which I actually believe to be an overload of energy so actually this is one of my favorite things. So I believe that anxiety, so when you think about getting sick, right, like just your average cold, you have a cold and it's all of these germs in your body that don't belong in your body. They're not yours. And so when you're sneezing and coughing and all this stuff, it's your body's mechanism to be able to rid itself of this stuff that's not a part of it. And that's what I believe anxiety is on an energetic level. It's when you are not fully embodying yourself. And so all of the energies from other people or other places or whatever that are not yours are infiltrating your energy field, are infiltrating your system. And so the anxiety and that feeling of like anxiety is you trying to rid your field of those things that are not yours.
Wow, that's interesting. I've never heard it described in that way, but it does make sense. I mean, who hasn't experienced anxiety? I definitely have had a lot of anxiety in the past, and people say often it's like, you know, you're empathic and you're picking up a lot of these energies. But also I feel like it's like, I mean, at least for me, it feels sometimes like an internal fire, and the energy doesn't know where to go. And, you know, you're so often behind the computer and doing stuff that it's not going anywhere. So it actually does feel like it's my energy too. Yeah.
And I do definitely agree with that. I do think that a lot of anxiety is very much like this feeling of needing to quell ourselves or not knowing exactly which way to move in order to exert the energy that we're trying to birth.
Yeah.
Or, you know, so yeah, I completely agree with that. But yeah, so I was dual diagnosed anxiety and bipolar 1. And I was really fortunate to be working with the psychologist who diagnosed me. Decided he normally took more of a psychoanalytic approach, but he decided to switch to cognitive behavioral to work with me because he felt like it was more suited, which is amazing. That's a sign of a great therapist, somebody who switch their philosophy. So so he had me be super, super mindful of when were my manic episodes starting to set on, when were they in full blast, when were they starting to come down, when was I starting to feel the onset of depression. And then as I was starting to track those things, he would add in, okay, so is there something that sets those things off? Is there an on-off switch for those things? And as I started paying more and more attention, I started realizing that when the people around me, whether the people I was living with in college, in my household, or the people who were attached to me from farther away, like my parents who were living a couple hundred miles off, or my friends in the UK, or you know, whomever it was who was maybe even farther away, when those people were having big ups or big downs at similar times, that's when I would experience a more. So that's what we call clairempathic, or being an empath. And so I was taking on other people's emotions as my own and experiencing them. And 2 years after I was diagnosed with bipolar 1, I went back into a different psychologist's office, and the same ones. I got a second opinion. And I had actually gotten a second opinion the first time after the first diagnosis as well.
Yeah.
And both of them said, you don't have bipolar disorder.
Whoa. So it sounds like it was like a big part of it was just tracking and the recognition and the right diagnosis, the awareness. And I'm sure you did a lot of other energetic work too, layered on top of that, because there is an internal experience that we're having often too. Like we were just talking about with the anxiety. I have never heard that before. That, I mean, I guess I understand the empathic part, and you think of people being in your energy field, but is it people like, so people that you're really close to, like your parents that you mentioned, would you be more likely to pick up on their energies from a long distance than say someone you're not as connected to?
So that's where we get into energetic courting and energetic hooking, which is essentially like for instance, you are walking down the street, you lock eyes with somebody, you have like this really intense locking eyes connection thing that happens, and all of a sudden your shoulder starts hurting, and you turn around because you've already walked past them, and you notice them kind of rubbing. Okay, that would be an empathic experience with somebody. Are you still there? You're frozen. Oh no. Sarah, come back to me. I'm really hoping this is still going. I'm going to try and talk. If those of you watching Facebook can still hear me, okay. Are you back?
And we're back.
Good. Okay, where'd you lose me?
I have no idea. Oh, you were just talking about the energy. Oh, cord. You was talking about cutting or the courting.
Yes.
Yeah.
Courting. So energetic courting is when you share energy with somebody. That could be somebody who is in your family, who you have an ancestral connection to. It can be somebody who's in your family who you have an adoptive connection to. It can be a friend. It can be a one-night stand. It can be somebody you've passed on the street. It can literally be anyone. When you exchange energy with somebody, there's the potential for an energetic cord or an energetic hook to form. And a cord, an energy cord, is when energy is flowing in what looks energetically and feels energetically like a cord. So let's say I'll form one through the computer to you right now, so you can feel it a little bit.
Ooh, sweet.
And then I'll cut it afterwards if you feel safe doing that. Do you feel safe doing that?
I do, and I like your energy, so I'm totally cool with being connected.
Okay, I'll cut it like right away. So I'm not gonna shoot anything or anything like that. I'm very big on ethics too. So for those of you watching, please know I asked her consent before I did that. So that's an important thing to do. Please don't consciously form energetic cords with people you're not like asking consent from. But Anyway, so if I form a cord from my heart to your heart, okay, so I'm forming this cord, and what's happening is that now energy is able to flow from you to me, from me to you, and you're able to access my energy and I'm able to access your energy. So it's a very equal playing field. It doesn't mean the relationship is healthy. It could be a toxic relationship where that's happening. But the point is that energy is able to flow between two people. And when I was having my episodes, it's because of who I was courted to, which was a lot of people, like a lot of people.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a class in the FeelTank. I know you're not teaching it. Are you taking it out now? Oh, I was hoping to have it for a little bit longer.
I can restring it if you want.
I feel like we already have a good amount of chords, or that we have chords just from our interactions. But I know we got to turn off here soon. So I just want to give people some resources and how they can work with this energy and, you know, not feel like there is necessarily a mental illness associated, unless, you know, obviously consult someone if you feel like there is. But around the lines of the cord cutting, Marcella Kroll, she's a teacher in the FeelTank, and she teaches a cord cutting 101 class that's been really popular for people, just about that, what you just taught, you know, how do we release these binds that we might not even know we have with our exes, with our, you know, family members or things like that. So check that out if you're interested in learning more about cord cutting and the FeelTank. And also you've got a number of classes, including accessing your psychic potential, basically psychic abilities 101, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. So yeah, I think it's called activating your psychic self, but I may be wrong.
That's right. Okay.
But yeah,
and how else do we work with you, Rachel? What are some good ways to get a hold of you?
Yeah. So coming up actually in the FeelTank on the last day of this month, I am doing activating your mental health.
Ooh, I didn't know that. I didn't know that was the title, but now I'm stoked. Okay.
Yeah, so I just, you know, I was so inspired when you asked me to come on here and do this conversation. I'm like, we need something in the tank too. So if people want to hop on May 31st at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific, that's when we'll be on. We'll be talking a little bit more about this and what it means to be psychic, not sick. That's the hashtag you can find stuff under on Instagram, hashtag psychic, not sick. So that's definitely a cool thing to check into.
Yeah, I'll be there.
That'd be awesome. Yeah, and then as far as learning a little bit more about what I do or working one-on-one with me, doorwaytoself.com. I'm also on Facebook, Doorway to Self, Instagram at Doorway to Self, and I am on YouTube as well, and I'm running a giveaway right now. The 100th subscriber to subscribe to my YouTube page, Doorway to Self, gets a free Doorway to Self potion of their choice.
Potions and notions. That's another class she's got in the FeelTank. What are your potions?
They're energetic vibrations. So basically I tune into kind of what is needed right now. And then I get the messages like, go make it. And so I use all sorts of things. I use plants, flowers, tarot cards, crystals, stones, spring water, rainwater. I mean, all sorts of stuff. So it's all, I mean, each one is completely specific, completely different. There's one for inner child wounding and healing. There's one for getting karmic justice within karmic relationships. There's one for called trance that you can get into your body really quickly after a really, really deep trance, and it also induces deep trance.
Cool.
Yeah, there are 5 of them. So, but those are just a few.
Well, I know, let's add the link to these potions and your website to the Facebook Live. And again, check her out in the FeelTank. And thank you so much for joining us. I feel like I want to do this again. Maybe we should do another one this month because there's so much content. Let's see how it flows. But yeah, get in touch with Rach if you have, you know, questions on this, and we'll respond to some of the questions I saw that came through on the Facebook Live. And thanks again, guys. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Bye.